Dear patrons, good morning. As we approach our final two Zooming with LD participants, I wanted to personally thank Marissa and David for helping us out, put everything together. In many ways, Zooming with LD has been the lone bright spot in 2020, as it allows me to connect with all of you on a personal basis. Yesterday, we had Dr. Sastry with Amosite, who is tackling one of the biggest issues in the world today, making virtual learning more effective and more enjoyable. Our next presenter is looking to bring anything that has a ticker into the future with a product offering that is simply unmatched. Naturally, I am biased as I own a few shares in the company. Based out of Los Angeles, California, and home of world champions, Lakers and Dodgers, SRAX, ticker SRAX, is a financial technology company that unlocks data and insights for publicly traded companies. Through its premier investor intelligence and communications platform, Sequire, companies can track their investor behaviors and trends and use those insights to engage current and potential investors across various marketing channels. It has been nearly 2 months since SRAX has acquired LD, and both the Lux Sunset Bel Air and my wealth manager still have no idea that the transaction has taken place. To stay as objective as possible, I will be getting off the call as soon as this intro is over. Ms. Zumbo will be fielding questions both in the Zoom app. You can ask questions right down below, as well as her email address, Marissa@ldmicro.com. Joining us on the call today is the CEO of the company, Mr. Chris Miglino. Chris, out of respect for you and the firm, I did not wear my alpaca mask this morning, even though it's Halloween tomorrow. The floor is now yours.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having us here today to talk a little bit about SRAX and what we're doing. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing our screen so we can get you guys the presentation. So hold on one moment here. So as Chris said, we are a company that is highly focused on data. We are focused on aggregating data of all different sorts, and over the years have built a number of businesses that have aggregated data around doctors and data around consumers. But over the last few years, we've been highly focused around aggregating data for public companies and helping public companies understand who it is that's buying and selling their stock. We have some really good news this morning that came out, and I'd love to share that with you guys. This morning we sold our interest in SRAX MD. So any of you that have been following our story would know that we started a company called SRAX MD some time ago, sold that to a private equity firm a little bit more than 2 years ago, and we sold our interest we had held back 30% of that business. And this morning we announced that we sold that remaining interest to them for $8 million. We had zero basis in that business on our balance sheet. So that business was not reflected on our balance sheet at all. So now today we have $8 million more on the balance sheet, and we're very excited about that. And we think that it was a good call to sell that business at this time because our business, the Sequire business, is growing so fast. I mean, the business is accelerating so rapidly that we can put that money to better use inside our own internal business than we could by having them keep it on the MD side. So, and plus it gets us a little bit more clear on our objective of being highly focused on the fintech business and highly focused on growing our SaaS platform. So some of our major accomplishments in this last quarter have been we completed a big debt financing. We completed the acquisition of LD Micro, which we couldn't be more happy about. It's been just an absolute pleasure working with Chris and the team over at LD Micro. Just an amazing group of people, as you all know, from coming to these events. And we're very excited about that. And we'll share a little bit about what our vision is collectively on putting these companies together. we just completed the sale of SRAX MD, which is fantastic for us. We've grown the revenue of Sequire over the last 6 quarters. So we've had 6 consecutive revenue growth quarters, and so we are, excited about that continued growth. We separated the BIGtoken business that we had. So we owned a business that was focused around consumer marketing, and we took that business and we separated it into its own public company. It's going to be trading under a new symbol called FPVD, Frank Paul Victor David, and that transaction should be finished in the next 20 to 30 days once the notices go out to all the shareholders. We had to wait 20 days after that, and so that's in the process right now. We're raising $3 million for the BIGtoken Pubco, and we've completed $1 million of that 3, and we'll be hopefully done with the other $2 million thereafter. We've launched a number of really cool implementations inside the Sequire platform, but the one that we're most proud of this quarter was the institutional investor tool that allows companies to prospect against other institutional investors and look at how those institutions are investing into other public companies. So our primary focus is on Sequire, and we like to call it an operating system for publicly traded companies. So this is a tool that every CEO, CFO, IR individual, IR company can use to manage what's going on inside of a publicly traded company. And it helps us understand the behaviors of investors in these companies, what their sentiment is, what they're doing, who they are, and provides a bunch of tools to market to them. So I'm going to go ahead and share some of those features that we have inside of Sequire. But first, I want to tell you, the last quarter, we announced that we had 91 clients. Now, we haven't updated this number yet because we have a nice big number for you in the when we have our November call. So we didn't want to give that number here today. We wanted to wait for the November call. So we're not going to update this number here today, but we will in a few weeks. We launched the institutional investor section of the platform, like I mentioned earlier. We launched a survey section where brands can, not brands, but public companies can survey their shareholders with different questions. So you can create almost like a mock proxy and send it out to all of your shareholders. And then you can see how each individual person voted on different issues. How do you think management's doing? Do you think that we should have bought LD? Do you think that combining these businesses was a good idea? So those are the type of questions you can ask out to your shareholders, and you can see how people are responding inside of the platform, and gives very good insight for the pubcos. Inside the platform itself, out of the 91 companies, we have around 1.5 million investors. So we have a deep understanding of 1.5 million investors that are invested in mostly small cap companies. And those investors have certain traits and certain characteristics that we've been able to really understand. And it gives us a lot of data and a lot of insights into who these people are and who's willing to buy what types of stock. And we can use that data to help us in the future understand who might be willing to buy that company stock in the future. We're almost finished with a virtual conference tool that is going to allow us to launch virtual conferences from inside the Sequire platform. So you as a Sequire customer will be able to launch a virtual conference inside the Sequire platform on your own. And also other virtual conference people will be able to use our software to launch their own virtual conference. So now let me walk you through some of the features and why we're having so much success with Sequire. The first thing it does is shareholder tracking. So inside the platform, we can display to a public company who their investors are, not just the people that are filing 13Fs and 13Gs, but actually the individual retail investors that are buying the stock. And then we can show them the trend of the ownership of that stock over time by individual, what price they bought and sold the stock. So I could see an individual in this case had bought some stock, and when the price went up a little bit, they sold the stock, then they bought it back. And it gives us a lot of insights into what the trends are, not only collectively across many different investors, but what the trend is individually for these investors. We have an institutional database where you can see who all of your institutions are and what the trends are inside that institutional side of the platform. So you can see who is filing 13Fs, 13Gs, and different reports saying that they own your stock. And then how does that look quarter to quarter, what those trends are, and provides an opportunity for public companies to be able to prospect against that list so that they can get the name, address, phone number, email address of those individuals and communicate with them so that they can try to reach out to these institutions to see if they would be willing to hear their story. In our surveys, we have the ability to send a survey out to all the shareholders. Do you think that we should buy any companies? Do you think we should merge with any companies? Do you think that the management of the company has done a good job? And then your shareholders can then answer these surveys. This can all be set up from within the platform. We have a tool that manages all the warrants for a company. So any warrant that a company has can be managed from within this platform, and it'll tell the company what they're in, what their shares look like as what's in the money at any given time. So if these warrants got to exercise today, this company would generate $21 million in revenue for the company. And then you can break that down by month, by week, by you can see who's coming up in the next 3 months. Just a number of tools that can help with the warrant management inside the platform. Now, there's a variety of other tools that we do inside the platform, but once companies are on there, they find it invaluable. And around 30% of our customers come to us and ask us if we can help them do marketing to get the name of their company out to investors. So what we do at that point is we create different ads. We'll create banner ads that run on display networks, places like CNBC or StockTwits or Bloomberg or Yahoo. And we're targeting people that we know are active in investing in publicly traded companies. And these are some examples of what those ads look like. Here's some other examples of what they look like as well. And we range across the board on many different companies. They're OTC companies, NASDAQ companies, New York companies, companies that are trading on the American. So all kinds of companies that are that we're doing this work for. This is an example of what it looks like on the page. So you can see here, here's one for SRAX, but here's one for Wrap Technologies. Here's what they would look like inside of social. So this is an example of Facebook and inside of Instagram. Here's been the growth of the Sequire platform to date. As you can see, we went from 12 to 32 to 37 to 59 to 68 to 91. And in November, we'll have a new number for you here. But the revenue has continued to accelerate over time. And the way that companies sign up for this is a year-long agreement. So we have a year-long contract that they sign up for. And so this is ongoing recurring revenue as we get more and more clients to join onto the platform. So what does this mean with LD, and why do we think that LD is an important mix of the Sequire platform? Well, LD is one of the, it's one of the most well-known and respected brands in the microcap space. And we think that there's a really big opportunity to take the customers that are on our Sequire platform and have them present at the LD micro events virtually. And when we get back to a normal world, when we can all go back to the Lux and Chris can order some more fat burgers for everybody, and we are going to have the ability for people to present at the Lux but there'll also be a virtual world of people that will be on the outside watching in. So inside of this platform, we have these 1.5 million shareholders through all these companies that are on the platform, through the 91 companies that we have on the platform. Now, all of those 1.5 million people will be invited to the LD micro event to watch it virtually. So in addition to yourselves and the people that have been loyal to the LD brand over the years, there will also be an audience of millions of people that will be able to watch these presentations from these amazing companies that Chris has uncovered. We're also going to take the ldmicro.com index and the other assets that they have on the email side and expand upon that. So the ldmicro.com index has been a great tool for many investors, and people love to go to this site, and it gets a lot of traffic. Now we're just going to add a bunch of additional services on this site and provide a bunch of additional services to the people that are visiting the LD Micro site. And we have lots of plans and lots of visions around what you're going to be able to do here, including seeing all the presentations that people are presenting at the LD Micro events all the time. So we'll have that all housed here. So it's an elevated format. You're not just going to be seeing it'll take what everybody loves already about LD and elevates it to the next level. It'll bring virtual conferencing into the system. We'll have millions of investors that will come in to see these presentations. We're going to build a investor community. So we're building the same way that Chris has done. Chris Lahiji has done an amazing job at curating an investor community inside the LD world right now. We're going to expand that to other people that are invested in these stocks, and we'll enhance the index. So we think that there's a bright future for LD and all the relationships that LD has. LD has around 2,000 companies that have come through the LD micro platform over the years. All those companies will be hopefully at one point be customers of the Sequire platform. So we'll not only be doing work for them on putting them through these conferences, but we will be intimately involved in helping them understand what's happening in their stock. We also have another asset. So as I said earlier, we sold our SRAX MD asset today. We also own a business that's called BIGtoken. And in the past, we've talked a lot about BIGtoken. If you've been following our story, BIGtoken is a tool that allows consumers to own their own data. And we know a lot about data ownership, privacy, and the rules around all of these issues. And we created a platform called BIGtoken. Well, it's time for BIGtoken to leave the nest and move into its own public company. And BIGtoken is moving into a public company with the symbol FPVD. So we've hired a new CEO for this company. His name is Malcolm Casal. He is a board member of SRAX and has been for a long time. He's been a good friend, and we've known Malcolm for years. He's been successful in every deal that I've ever seen him do. Very successful. He has helped bring companies from startup to sale on 11 different occasions. We have George Stella, who's the CRO of that business, that has done a great job at bringing the BIGtoken name to the market. So we currently, SRAX is going to own 88.9% of FPVD, and there'll be additional money raised into the BIGtoken platform. And what this enables us to do is get rid of the burn that BIGtoken has on the SRAX entity, and lets them do their own financing, and lets BIGtoken do their own financing. So our goal is to, by the time we close this transaction, we hope to have around $3 million raised for that, which I think we will. We've established an amazing board of directors. We've added 2 people to the board, both of whom have amazing resumes in the digital advertising space. So now I'd like to open it up to any questions.
Hi there. I know it's weird not to see Chris Lahiji doing this. but I'll be your makeshift Chris Lahiji for the day. I'll be asking some of the questions that all of the attendees have been asking in the chat, in the Q&A, and sending to my or Chris's email. Again, if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to add them to any of those places. But I'll get into it and ask Mr. Chris Maglino some of the questions that you guys have been aggregating. So here's a good one. Well, first of all, when is the company going to be reporting earnings? And there was another question in regards to when's the November call, which I assume is the same thing.
Yeah, so we'll, as soon as humanly possible, we will be doing that, but it looks like it's probably going to be on the last day, the 16th.
Okay, great. Does your product replace investor relations?
No, in fact, we've partnered with around 20 investor relations companies. So it doesn't replace investor relations at all. We work with investor relations companies to help them understand what's going on inside their clients' companies. And a lot of investor relations companies partner with us to help them, and they become resellers of our product. So they become an extended sales team for us in helping bring our product to market.
Why did you sell the SRAX MD piece? Wasn't it worth quite a bit more than 8 million?
No, well, the way that the MD piece was set up was as a, we had a preferred piece of paper there that was in an LLC. So it's kind of a unique situation. While we own 30% of the business, there was different levels of money that that got allocated. So there was, if they sold the business for a certain amount of money, then we would have gotten up to a certain amount of cash, but then an other series of preferred kicked in before we would ever see another amount of money above that. They anticipate that they'll sell the business in the future at some point. We got protected that if they sell the business anytime within the next 6 months, that they would pay us the full amount of money that we otherwise would have received. So that amount was somewhere in the close to 11 point something million dollars. But we think that the Sequire business is growing so fast now that that money is better with us than it is in the growth of their business. We think that this is the fastest growth that we've ever experienced in any of the businesses that we've ever started, and we want to be 100% focused on this. We don't want the distraction. We don't want the the confusion of what is that asset? Why isn't it on the balance sheet? I mean, it was on the balance sheet as zero, and we always had to explain it to everybody. So now we have that money on our balance sheet, and it can enhance what we're doing, and we think it'll be better suited with us than it would with a third-party company.
And as if any of you are signed up for our press releases, you can kind of see that in detail and see more discussion about it as well. Do you own the shareholder lists and data that aggregates from the 1.5 million investors on your platform?
No, the companies themselves own their own data inside the platform, but we build community inside of the LD micro events, and we own that data around the people that are coming to the conferences and participating in the indexes and things of the sort. But we do glean a lot of insights from the ownership of that data.
And in general, can you talk more about the competitive landscape for Sequire and how it's evolved in the past 2 years?
So there's big brands that play in this space. People like NASDAQ and ICH Markets, with the iPrio product, and we were always very frustrated with the reports that we would get from our IR companies from these assets. They would just show us what was owned in the last quarter. These are the institutions that owned your stuff in the last quarter, but there was nothing actionable that could happen there. I could never set up an email. I couldn't email my investors. I couldn't communicate with them. And I said, there's got to be a better way to do this. And that's why we built Sequire, and is evident by the number of companies that we're signing up that there's a need in the market for what we've built.
And I believe you said about 30% of the clients that are on Sequire also come to you for different kinds of media or marketing strategies or campaigns. Can you go into detail a little bit more about that?
Yeah, around 30% of our customers on the Sequire platform also buy media from us. So, our goal is to build an amazing ecosystem community of public companies that are on the Sequire platform. But if some of them want to buy media, which we're very good at doing, then we want to help those people with those objectives as well. The analogy I like to give to public companies when they ask me, how much money do I need to spend to get attention for our stock? I like to say, you are a new drink at Whole Foods, and you need to spend as much money as you can to make sure that the consumers are going to buy your drink. When you walk into Whole Foods and you look at the drink section, there are so many drinks there that you don't even know where to start. I mean, and that's what it's like being a public company. It's even more competitive. You really have to keep your name in front of all these investors, and that's what we've been good at doing.
Can you describe the Sequire Stock for Ads program a little bit more in detail?
Yeah, some of our customers choose to pay for media and services in stock. And we like to be vested in those companies so that instead of paying us for that media in cash, we could take the stock before we start to do any awareness for the company. We can take that payment in stock, and then as the company progresses, we have the ability to sell that stock starting after a 6-month period. And we're used to that ecosystem because when we were doing business and still are doing business for the likes of a Procter & Gamble and Kraft and people like that through our consumer BIGtoken business, those companies don't pay us for 6 months anyway. So when we would get big dollars coming in the door, it would take us 6 months to receive that capital. So we're used to living inside that environment.
Great. Do you recognize the stock you get from clients for Stock for Ads as revenue up front or monthly as you then pay for ad spend?
We monthly as we pay for ad spend.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just a little bit more explanation on
Yeah.
that. So as companies use the media, so if we took in $1 million worth of stock, and it was allocated over a 2-year period, we would divide that by a 24-month period and recognize it accordingly.
Switching over a little bit to the LD acquisition, how do you envision, you discussed it a little bit, but how do you envision the conferences looking different now that SRAX owns LD?
I promise that Chris will still have pizza and hamburgers, but we envision that it remains very much the same physically once we can get back to that one of these days. But in addition to being there physically, we'll also be able to invite millions and millions of people to the conferences, to the conference over time. So you're going to be able to log in and see a presentation from a company, even if you're not one of the best investors in the world that's in the LD micro family. You'll be able to do that if you're just an investor in a company. We'll invite you to watch that conference and watch that presentation virtually.
And when we go back to the live conferences and the economic environment normalizes, what do you expect the revenue and contribution of LD Micro to be?
Well, those numbers are going to be coming out in this next Q. So we haven't published anything around that yet. So let's wait for this Q, and we can talk in more detail about that once we put this Q out. And we can also talk about the profitability of Sequire itself, what that looks like without BIGtoken, and how profitable is that business, and what kind of margin does LD add to that.
Yeah, there are a few questions on here that might be a little bit forward-looking, or that you might answer on the November call instead. So forgive me if I ask some of them. You can always just say
Sure.
We'll talk about that later. One of them is, what does the balance sheet and cap structure look like?
Currently, right, well, you could take the $8 million that we sold the MD asset for today, and we currently have a debt deal that we did that is public, and you guys can see that. And then this cash that we bring in will be offsetting that debt on the balance sheet. And then also you'll see that there is a substantial amount of assets that are now on the book that weren't there last quarter. And you'll see that, when we do our numbers, you'll get a sense of what that number looks like. It's a little hard to talk about it now because we haven't talked about that number publicly yet, but we're 2 weeks away from that.
Going back a little bit to the Sequire platform itself, do you have larger companies on Sequire, or is it mostly micro cap, small cap?
No, we've signed up a few billion-dollar companies onto the platform. We had, we're having calls with really big brand recognized companies that everybody's heard of on this phone. So it's not only small cap companies, it's definitely moving upstream. We started with small cap companies, and as we've added more onto the platform, it's become much more appealing to that audience. And also the phenomenon of the Robinhood traders and that audience buying a lot more stock has become important to public companies. They've realized that they need to have some kind of communication with these smaller investors. It's not just the institutions that are driving the price of the stock. It's also this massive distribution of retail investors as well. And so we're getting a lot of attention around that.
It's good that you mentioned Robinhood, because there was a question directly relating to that. It says, what % of the investors on Sequire are from Robinhood? And are you able to capture data from other providers such as Fidelity, Schwab, TD Ameritrade, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so we haven't shared, and nor do I think we will share the percentages of those individual investors. But yes, we're capturing data from Robinhood, from Interactive Brokers, from TD Ameritrade, E-Trade, Charles Schwab. The list goes on, and we're captivating that data inside the platform for the public company. So at the end of the, at any given time, a public company can know how many Robinhood traders that they have.
Besides what's already been discussed, are there any insights that you learn about the investors themselves through the platform?
Yeah, well, we're able to aggregate all of their social data, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter information, their phone numbers, their email addresses, and through all of that data, because we've been in this data business for a really long time, we can aggregate many additional insights into those shareholders. So we can append a lot of other data about the characteristics of the people that are buying stock in each individual issuer.
Are you able to talk about what the kind of standard Sequire pricing is, or does it differ from company to company based on their needs?
No, it's for OTC companies, it's $1,500 a month with a year-long contract, and for listed companies, it's $3,000 a month for a year-long contract. And then whatever media they buy on top of that is in addition to that fee.
How many clients does Sequire need to be profitable?
You'll see that in the November conference call.
Are there any other various revenue streams that you can talk about, not just in regards to Sequire, I'm assuming also in regards to SRAX?
No, so we're just narrowing it down to the Sequire platform itself and obviously LD, which has been profitable for a long time. And we're bringing, that is it. It's just the Sequire business, the SaaS platform itself, the media that's being bought around that, and the conferences. And there's a variety of other opportunities that we haven't talked about yet that will present themselves over the next year. But that's really the focus of the business.
After bouncing back a little bit over to BIGtoken and what's recently happened with the division of companies, after the 3 million is raised for BIGtoken, how much will SRAX own?
Well, you can see there's a filing that BIGtoken made or FPVD made, so you can see what the deal is. So it's a 20% discount to the next transaction. So that will be determined when the next financing happens. So it really depends on the valuation where they raise the next $5 million, which they are working on right now.
And what's going to happen to current FPVD shareholders?
They will be owners of BIGtoken.
This is a little bit of a longer one, and it might be a bit forward-looking, but with the acquisition of LD Micro and the announced reverse merger of FPVD, it's evident SRAX has a broad vision of expanding the brand and growth. With the strong management team you are assembling for BIGtoken, can you comment on the plan and timeline of BIGtoken and what the current valuation of BIGtoken is?
The valuation of BIGtoken will be determined when when everything gets moved into the public company itself and when the additional capital is raised. So I can't comment on that today.
Right.
The team is working diligently now in putting together additional board members for that business and for expanding their sales efforts. They've had a lot of really good success this year they've signed up all the big brands onto the platform. Not every single big brand, but enough that that they have a business that can sustain itself. And that's why we thought it was a good time to separate these and have that be a very clear story of consumer marketing, and then have a clear story about investor management, SaaS platform. That's really where we want Sequire to be focused, is just on the growth of the SaaS platform.
In regards to SRAX MD and the sale that just happened, this person said, it seems like you have substantial net operating losses. Will you be able to use these against the gain on the sale of SRAX MD?
Yes, of course. Yep.
Would you guys be looking to make another acquisition anytime soon?
No. We're spending 24 hours a day talking to public companies to be on the Sequire platform. Chris and I are having an absolute blast doing that, and it has been 24/7. So maybe after we sign up 2,000 companies onto Sequire, but between now and then, we're just highly focused on that.
How does Sequire track buy and sell activity by institutional investors in a stock? Does it require that the institutions themselves share the trading activity?
Institutions, no. Institutions all file. So all the institutions that are buying and selling are filing. So we're just using all of our technology to scrape that data, pull it into a platform, organize it, and present it. The key is to identify where are those institutions custodying their shares, where are they holding them, and what are they doing intra-period. So I don't really care what you filed on your 13F. I want to know what you're doing today. So our goal is to identify where those shares are being custodianed, and then watch the activity of that custodian over time with high probability that that stock is coming from a specific institution.
Will SRAX itself be buying media to drive its own awareness? If you're doing so already, why do you think the stock is not trading at more volume currently?
No, we will. We're going to wait until we have this quarter buy, and then we'll be buying our media to promote the good news that we have. And
this one's going back a little bit more to the LD Micro website because you touched on it in some of your slides. You may not have exact timelines and maps for the plans for the LD Micro website, but do you know approximately how many registered users it has, and what part of ldmicro.com does that contribute a lot to the revenue for SRAX?
So ldmicro.com currently doesn't have a revenue model. So there's no revenue being generated in ldmicro.com now, but there will be revenue coming from the ldmicro.com site. And we're working through building that up. We haven't shared any numbers on the registered users there. Maybe we will in the future, but we have not to date. Because we're really, right now, we're very focused on the virtual side of the conferences and building that out.
And going back a little bit, bouncing back and forth between the various different highlights, what approximate, if you can share, what approximate percentage of revenue is paid in stock versus cash right now in terms of the Sequire platform and stock?
We'll share that on the conference call in November as well.
And this one might be another one that you'll share more about in November, but do you ultimately see the platform driving more revenue, or is it the ad segment that does?
Ultimately, the recurring revenue from the platform will, I think, exceed the media side.
And is there a target date for the completion of the FPVD to BIGtoken stock change? Do you have any information on the FPVD reverse split that was in the filing? Which again, might be something you can't.
They issued a information statement that got mailed out to their holders, and we got to wait 20 days for that to happen. So sometime within the next 30 days, provided that there's no commentary or anything that happens from the SEC side, BIGtoken should be traded on its own inside FPVD.
And then I think that's a lot of the questions that we had kind of listed over here. I want to try and, stop us at 8:45-ish so that you have a break before your full slate of meetings today. But I just wanted to, asking for myself, how do you think that the COVID era and everything that's been happening in the world has affected SRAX and the Sequire platform as a whole?
I think that, our business has skyrocketed since COVID came into place. Probably because I'm not driving 3 hours a day to the office, and neither is anybody else in our office. But I think that companies are becoming much more aware of the need to understand who is buying and selling their stock from a retail perspective. So much has been done in the IR world around trying to accumulate institutional investors. And I think that it's become evident over this last, since February, March of this year, that retail investors have the ability to drive substantial value for companies. And we're helping companies accomplish that. And I think that's been the biggest lesson that companies have learned over this last 6 to 8 months.
Is there any changes that have occurred in the company or how you do things during this period that you would continue at once quarantine is over and the world gets back a little bit more to normal?
Yeah, I used to be a staunch advocate of having everybody in the office all the time, and now that I've seen the productivity that can take place without having people in a physical location together and having these virtual elements of communication, our operating expenses have cut down significantly due to we actually closed our LA office and put 50 people virtually. We did the same thing with our Wichita, Kansas office. Everybody's working virtually out of there as well. And the air travel and expenses of traveling have been cut down significantly. And I think these things will be here for a long time to stay. I think that instead of getting on a plane to go to New York to meet with investors, this is going to be the method of that communication.
Right. And I think that there is no replacement really for in person, and Lahiji says that all the time as well, that he's not a big fan of doing the virtual events. He loves being in person, and there's really no replacement for that. And but in its stead, I do think that we've learned a lot from being online and being able to work online as well.
Yeah, the ability to get together with other people in the community, in the LD community, I think is essential. And when I talk about having these meetings virtually. I'm talking a lot of the one-on-one opportunities, but I think being able to get that community together a few times a year is very, very valuable, and we're going to build upon that.
Well, I think even what people have seen, especially for those like me that live alone, being stuck in your house with very little to distract yourself from your own thoughts besides work can sometimes be a little bit detrimental or sad. So it's nice to be able to be around people, not just on a screen, but in person as well. But when influenza happened and they didn't have the virtual element, the world really did grind to a halt, and we've been able to keep the world moving, and as much as people may not think so, keep the economy moving, despite everything that's been happening. The last thing I'll really ask is what kind of birthed the idea of Sequire to begin with, and are there any? I know you can't talk about set in stone kind of plans, but do you see the platform expanding in any other kind of large and meaningful ways outside of the kind of avenues that it currently is in?
Oh yeah, we have a whole pipeline of services that are being added to the platform now, all of which are amazing things that we've conjured up, and all things that we know that are important to us as a public company. So we've, those are all being worked on now from our development team. That's the thing with platforms like this; they can never stop. You can never stop working on them. You can never stop building things. You always have to continue the development on the process of these things. So that is very, very important. And the first part of your question was,
what kind of birthed the idea of Sequire?
It was birthed out of getting a IPREO report from my IR firm saying these are your investors, and me looking at it going, this is not our investor base. I know this is not our investor base, and saying there has to be a way to figure out who our real investors are. And it just started building from there, and we started doing it for ourselves, and then other companies asked us if we could help them, and then it just started to grow organically, and it grew very quickly, and so that's how we got to where we are today.
Excellent. Last question. What is your Halloween costume going to be for tomorrow?
Well, I'm really good at making ribs. Like, my kids think I should open a store, like a rib store. So I was gonna be a pig with a chef hat on and hand out ribs in my neighborhood, but COVID has kind of put a little kibosh on that, and my wife is telling me that nobody's gonna take my ribs right now. So I don't know that I have one yet. I don't know.
Well, save it for next year.
Perfect.
Save that idea for next year. Thank you so much for talking to me this morning, Chris.
Thank you very much, Marissa. I appreciate it. You're very good at this. Thank you.
For full disclosure purposes, LD is a subsidiary of SRAX, obviously. And I think that's about it for today. I know you have a full slate of meetings. I apologize to anyone if there were questions that I didn't see or that we didn't answer. Feel free to send them to me or Chris at ldmicro.com, and we'll forward them to Mr. Miglino here. And everyone have a great day, a great weekend, and a happy Halloween. Thanks again, Chris.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.